first time. I just couldn't take it looking at all those dead bodies. It's always dead, 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 chopping them up, looking at their insides. And they treat the bodies like, they're just a piece of trash. But we get numb to it. But ultimately, death brings pessimism. People look at life and say, well, I am going to die. So I better have as much fun as I can until I die. So they really work on having fun, and then they exhaust all their fun avenues. And then they say, oh my goodness, I've done just about everything I can do, and I'm not having fun anymore, so now I guess I'm just going to have to kill time until I die. That's depressing. That's very depressing. Gilda Radner, do you remember Gilda Radner from Saturday Night Live? She died of cancer. And as she was battling with cancer, she said, cancer is the most unfunny thing that I can think of. I would agree with that. I don't know if it matters if it's cancer or heart disease or diabetes or whatever. I think what it finally comes down to is death is the most unfunny thing in life. But then Jesus comes in and he blows it out of the water, doesn't he? There's no room for death with Jesus, is there? He only talks about it as something that he gets rid of. He says, and in fact, he says to us, we have eternal life. If you believe in him, it says you have crossed over from death and you have eternal life. You're on the path. The quality of your eternal life is going to change once you get to heaven. But you are on the path now. That's what Jesus says. Well, let's go on. Jesus says that eternal life involves a physical resurrection from the dead. He says, do not be amazed at this, for a time is coming when all who are in their graves will hear his voice and come out. Every Sunday we recite a creed, right? And every Sunday, don't we say, I believe in the resurrection of the dead. Why do we do that? Because he said it, right? Because he said it. Now, he's talking about a physical resurrection, right? It's not just a spiritual resurrection, because he says that the bodies are going to come out of the grave. Now, if he's going to go to all the trouble of raising our physical bodies, that must mean they're important, right? Well, if our physical bodies are important, what does that mean about what we do with our physical bodies today? Does it mean it's inconsequential? Does it mean that it doesn't matter? If he is going to transform our physical bodies for all of eternity, it must mean that what happens here and what we do with our flesh and blood is of the utmost importance to God. If you came in today depressed and you're thinking, he's really trying to pump me up today. You're right, I am. I am. And it doesn't matter about your circumstances. You may be in some really, really difficult circumstances, and I'm certainly not minimizing them. I'm not saying, well, what Jesus says takes away all the pain and all the worry and all the stress. Not at all. What I am saying to you, though, is in the midst of even the worst circumstances, you have the power of the living God not only working through you, around you, and in you, but you know that he is molding you and he is leading you step by step to eternity. And that is enough. That is enough in the worst of circumstances. There will be a resurrection, and God will judge us at that resurrection. Jesus goes on to say, moreover, the Father judges no one, but has entrusted all judgment to the Son. Our lives are so important because we are accountable for them. What we do, we are going to answer for. And when you think about that, doesn't that make sense? You're accountable every day of your life, aren't you? You're accountable when you drive your car, right? You're accountable when you go to school. You're accountable when you go to work. You're accountable at home, aren't you? Any kids? Any of you here today? You didn't do your chores. You didn't do the dishes, you're accountable. All through life, we're judged. Now, why in the world, when we die, would that all of a sudden be over? Wouldn't that make everything that happens in this life kind of meaningless? It only makes sense that if we go through this whole life, and we're always trying to live up to a standard, there's got to be a judgment. A one final judgment. Jesus tells us that. A lot of people make fun of that, though, don't they? Oh, yeah, we're going to be judged by God. I think a lot of times what people are afraid of most, they make fun of. But you don't have to be afraid of Judgment Day. You don't have to be afraid. What does Jesus say? Whoever honors the Son honors the Father. The whole reason he came to this earth was so you wouldn't have to be afraid of standing before the Father. That's what the cross is all about. That's what the forgiveness of sins is all about. It's so that at any given moment we're ready to stand before God in heaven. That's the God that we've got. Remember what Jesus said to Nicodemus, for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son. That's the one who's going to judge. Now let me ask you, you got different options. The people who want to do away with God, the atheist says, well, you don't have to worry about judgment because when you die, and that's it. Okay, that might make us feel good until we think, well, what am I going to do for the rest of all eternity? Nothing. You end. That's it. That's scary, isn't it? Especially when you think about life right now. Things aren't going so good. Oh, man. Okay, so you got that option. Then you got the option of all the other religions that say, well, you got to make your stairway to heaven, one step at a time. You got to do good things to earn your way. Okay, and then you walk up your stairway that you've made. Okay, but nobody ever tells us. This kind of gets back to that old ladder example of mine. Nobody tells us, how many stairs do I got to build? I mean, I don't want to come up one short. How many stairs do I have built already? And do I have enough time to make enough to get to heaven? Nobody tells us that. And then you have what Jesus Christ offers you. He says everybody gets into heaven the same way. Everybody gets eternal life the same way. No exceptions, no favoritism. He says the price has been paid. The admission has been paid for everybody. And it's given to everybody. And the one who takes the tickets is the one who paid for the tickets and is the one who gives the tickets. Now let me ask you something. Of the three options you got, which is the most accessible? Which is the most fair? Which is the most attractive? This is serious. Because Jesus says eternity is not going to be the same for everybody. And these are hard words. He ends saying, those who have done good will rise to live, and those who have done evil will rise to be condemned. It's easy to come to church, or easy to read the Bible. It happens to me all the time. I read it, and, okay, I got it, and then I'll move on to the rest of my day, and it just leaves. It's kind of like those three guys that went deer hunting. I thank Loyson for this illustration. Three guys went deer hunting. Wake up there, Loyson. Now, come on. I'm 40. They were going to come to church again. Three guys go deer hunting, and one of them's a preacher. And they see this big buck. And all three shoot at the same time. But only one bullet hits it. So they're all three around the deer. And they're arguing, whose bullet is it, Well, the game warden comes along and they explain the situation. And they say, well, game warden, would you take a look at that deer? Who do you think shot it? Takes one look at it. He says, oh, it's the preacher. The preacher? How come the preacher? Because the bullet went in one ear, out the other. And that's easy to do, right? For us all. We have that